what are lower thirds, but if you just divided your screen up into a top section, a middle section, and a lower section into three sections, your lowest of your three sections would be considered your lower third. And it's utilized to introduce people, introduce locations, combination of both. It sets a scene for a composition, um, often used in newscasting. So it'll tell the person's name and where they're at if they're like on scene or something like that. You'll also hear them. You'll hear them referred to as lower thirds, but you'll hear graphic overlays. You'll hear title bars. I'm sure there's many other options of what people call them. So we're going to kind of start with what I would consider one of the harder ones, using a lot of masking and simple animated keyframes and then just a few easy eases. So masking is amazing with After Effects. There's so much you can do. I've even, as an example, I've even taken a digital painting, a Photoshop painting of a surgery, medical surgery, and brought it into After Effects and then done a really simple path, masking and a little needle to make it look like a suture was going in. And then I've got this animated surgical procedure. I've got a digital illustration of it, upselling them to the next step of a small motion graphic for the surgical procedure. It's just a way to add on to your art skills and the amount of impact that your digital art can have in the world. So there's just so much. I'm applying it to lower thirds here. It can be applied to so many things. Okay, so we're working in this EVO animated logo that we've already done. We faded on, we swooshed on and faded. It's pretty long. I can probably crop the composition settings down from 2 seconds. Oh, it's at 2.5. That's fine. I can leave it at that. If yours is more at like 5, just crop this down a little bit. It doesn't have to be so long. We can always change it if we need more. And that's created an animated logo composition. Here's that animated logo composition and all the layers that make that composition. So we are now going to make a totally new composition within this project. It's kind of like creating a new layer in Illustrator or a new folder of items in Photoshop. So new composition. Again, always know why you would use one of these versus another. My most recent clients, I've been using this HD TV 1080 for this 1920 ratio just because TVs are getting more and more common at the fullest, widest screen possible. But that's going to change in 12 months from this video publishing. It's possibly going to be different. 10 seconds works, black background. Oh, let's call this EVO. Label them so you know what you're doing. EVO lower thirds. So now I have 2 compositions. I'm going to create this one. At the very end, we're going to make a third composition. We're going to dump each of these compositions into it and animate them together. So just kind of start seeing that. These are these guys here. I wish they'd make it more clear that it's a tab, kind of like how Illustrator does. That bugs me. All right, so we are going to type out the word John Doe. John Doe. Grab my arrows. Century Gothic, because I want a really thick one. Done. Characters. Century Gothic, bold. Yep. About 150 points. I'm not going to mess with anything else, and it's going to be white. Now, go to your Align panel. Got to have it selected. Go to your Align panel and center, center. If that Align panel is not open, go to Window, Align. Okay. So, next, I'm going to draw a rectangle behind. I just want a rectangle, like just a little box sitting behind it. We're going to make it blue. Now, unselect anything. You You can click here, you can click there, whatever. You don't want anything selected. If you do that, it's going to create it as a mask. So I just want a rectangle, kind of like this. That works. I'm going to bring this layer below. That's what you're going for. You can center this guy also. And my fill color, you want it to be very specific. I cannot emphasize enough about knowing your client's brand colors and how often I see whatever, a front desk person doing some marketing collateral and they just grab a bright blue. And when you look at a spread of all the materials they've created, there may be 10 different blues used across the board. They need to be specific. If you're learning about branding, if you're branding a client, everything needs to be that exact, not close, exact colors. Okay, so this is pulled from that EVO logo. It's the exact colors. You would know this from the brand. If you didn't, you could always grab that logo in digital format and eyedropper to get an almost exact match. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. Next, I'm going to make a rectangle mask over this shape, but I'm going to have it be kind of off the left sides. So now I do want it to be a mask. I can have this layer selected. You can also forces, kind of like a little bit newer in After Effects tool creates mask. You can click on that. It's 100% going to make it as a mask. It was already going to. But notice when I start to draw this while I have this shape layer selected, it's going to hide everything. There it is. But I kind of want it off the side. So I'm just going to go right here. It's made a mask. Perfect. You can always change things. This gets cool and more advanced, but like notice how you can add, you can subtract, like depending on how your flow is going and what you're trying to accomplish, just know that those things exist. I'm going to grab this layer and go Command D to duplicate the mask. And while I've got this mask selected, I'm going to hit Shift so it does it at a bigger speed and use my right arrow to like click it all the way over and off. I don't need to be crazy off, just a little bit. Boom. Okay. Perfect. Now, we're going to animate these masks. And that's what I mean when I said the medical illustration, how you can animate little pieces of things to expose or not expose, or to hide, I guess would be the opposite. So I want to open up the properties for these where I can see both mask paths. That's what we're going to set keyframes up to and move. And just like you could move a sphere from the top of a screen to the bottom and back up using keyframes, you can do the same thing using keyframes with path masks and move these tiny little points. So click off, click back on, and notice points, just like you're used to seeing in Illustrator. I can select one, I can hit Shift and select both, and then you can move them. Okay, so before I do that, I'm going to make a stopwatch for both those and set up a keyframe at the beginning. Then let's go grab this guy, Shift click, and I'm going to bring him over to like the center of these two words. It could be the very dead center if you wanted it. It's just kind of where we're going to go with that. Next, I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure they overlap. If not, you'll have like a little black gap, which maybe that's has a creative purpose in someone's art, but we're not going to. And now what's cool, oh, we did not move it down our timeline. That's funny. Okay, I'm undoing, quick, back. There we go. Move to 2 seconds. You won't create any motion if you're on the same keyframe. Okay, now just repeat that step. Notice that it's creating those keyframes for us, which is awesome. And now you could scrub across your timeline and you do kind of already have something cool. Like that works. Let's beef it up. Grab them all. Control click. Go down to the bottom. I know you can't see it. to keyframe assistance and do easy ease. It's just a simple, it's going to be slow at the beginning, gain speed, and then slow again at the end. It makes it a little less mechanical, a little cooler to look at. Okay, like that, you could be done. We're going to add on to this because we're trying to beef up our skill set and practice multiple things. So, next, we're going to do something quite complicated. We are going to use these two layers. Let's hide them like that. And we are going to take this layer and sort of make it a mask, similar to what you would do in Illustrator with a mask. And it's going to show whatever's down below it. Even being text like this, it's going to be cool. So the way you do that is you have to set up, you have to make sure your modes are showing. I find this next step extremely confusing with After Effects. They consider these little kind of groupings of properties to be columns. A lot of you are not going to have the right column open. So you need to click just to this like space over by source name, control click, see the word columns. Make sure modes has a check mark. If it doesn't, click it. Then it'll make another column and show you the modes. All right, so here's my modes. And I want to click on this shape layer. Right now it has no like alpha, which kind of is considered like a masking setup to it. But we want to alpha matte this to John Doe. Now anything we change this to will show up just in the John Doe. And then what's real cool is there's nothing, spacebar, and then it shows. And that's cool. And again, you could stop kind of at that point. That could be a lower third. Probably need a little bit more information, but you get what I'm saying. Now, let's beef it up. Let's take it even a step further. We're going to take this shape layer. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to bring it to the bottom. We are not panicked about anything right now. We're like, whatever. We are going to change the color back to that blue color, that bright blue, 1A, 25AB. And now what's cool is all of it's on. And that is one way of doing this. You could also have John Doe as a little composition and then throw a mask and animate those points over top of the composition. But then you're not learning about these alpha masks. So that's cool. Now let's take it even a step further. We can grab these two layers. I can shift them down just a little bit. Notice what happens when I do that. He's going to stay there. And he comes on. I'm going to undo that just a little. Okay, so we've got these two layers. We are going to duplicate these layers. Command D. That's cool. I'm going to shift them down about a second in my timeline, down my timeline. So like here, I'm then going to grab this bottom layer that is addressing the color. Right now it's just the same color as the other, so it doesn't look like anything's happening. And I'm going to change it to a whole nother color. Whoops. And see how now this is a whole different thing. He could be whatever. We are going to make him a very specific brand color, 6ED34A from the logo. Shifting it means that those animated keyframes are just going to come on a little later. And now look at the magic. Comes on, follows suit. He could be anywhere. Like if I wanted him to start like in here, just move it to where you just kind of barely see how that's like starting. I can see a little bit of green. Just move it to where it's like that. Like you've got to understand what's happening and how, so that you understand how you can adjust it to your own look. Okay, so he's on, and then green is chasing it over to the center, and then boom. And that's cool. Like we've beefed it up a little. It looks a little cooler. Okay, now we're going to add to this because who is John Doe? Our audience does not know. We're going to grab our type tool and click head coach, lowercase, and I'm going to turn the Century Gothic to regular. I want him thin. Oop, I did not have him selected, so he was like, I don't know what you want me to do. We're going to turn it down to 50. Again, you wouldn't necessarily know that number, but you would know that yours was 150 and how to go a little smaller. I'm then going to center him, which is weird. Obviously, we're not going to leave him there, but I'm going to nudge him down to kind of where I want him to be. That works. Okay. I'm going to start a keyframe for its position in its final resting place, which is this guy. This is where I want him to be. And I want it to kind of like, how can it address into the other? I want it sort of as like, this is coming down. That's where I want him to end. So I'm at 1 second and 20 frames. I'm going to open up my transform so I can see things that I can animate. And I'm going to start a keyframe. Like this is where I want him to end. And I'm going to work backwards from that. Okay, then I'm going to go back to the left a little bit. Oh, and he may look a little funny, so we can always change it. And I'm going, let's just see what it would look like if he was like inside there. Look, and then he kind of pushes out, which I guess I should have centered him up better. Centered up my actual masks instead of doing them a little bit to the left or the right, how I put them in between John Doe. But let's just see how this looks. I obviously don't want that to be there. And then, boom. And that's going to look a little funny, so we're going to change that just a little bit. First, we're going to bring this in so that he doesn't even show up. And then he's going to push out. Now, I'm not loving the way it looks. He also is going to have to go below everything. Let's try it again. He comes on. And see, and then he just pops on, which is weird. So we're going to grab that layer and we're going to move it just a little bit longer so that it doesn't start until he hits there. Okay. In, down. We tried for a little bit cooler. We could have made that work, but this is going to be interesting. Now, let's open up our keyframes again on here. Let's add some eases. I know you can't see all that. And let's play it. Comes on. Head coach. Perfect. That's perfect. And we're working in the center because it just helps you like utilize your line and really get those things centered up instead of actually utilizing this lower third spot, because we are going to now take our two compositions, make a new composition. We are going to call this, we'll say logo and lower third. So we know everything's in this guy. Yep, that all seems good. 10 seconds is fine. And I'll hit OK. So now I have 3 compositions. I'm going to grab my animated logo and my lower thirds, bring them down into here. We're going to piece them together in this guy. I'm going to change my layers up. That's how my brain works. And I'm going to move him down a little. I can always adjust this and make it longer. So now what's going to happen is our animated logo is going to play. Cool. We're going to grab this animated logo. We're going to open up the transform and start a keyframe at position and scale, because we're going to move them and scale them down little. You just need to live there, giant. So now I'm going to go, let's see how many seconds we're at. Yeah, pretty quickly, about a second over. And now I'm going to scale him down. You can always use this, but make sure you're hitting shift. I'm going to scale him down, let's say about 40%. And I'm going to move him. Now, technically speaking, this would be my lower thirds area that he could live. I like to work a little bit more in the realm of square because a lot of my clients, I am using the same stuff across ratios that are vertical and ratios that are horizontal. So I use a square a little bit. So I'm going to put him within kind of my square because that just works better for me. Cool. We can add some eases. Super easy. Keyframe. I know that's crazy. You can't see it. It's kind of annoying. And we can just like test this piece out. He fades in. Boom. He goes over. It's pretty quick, which is cool. Then this lower thirds comes in and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? Let's grab him. Oh, let's also, on this animated logo layer, I need it to be longer. I can either go in to this layer and lengthen it from 2.5 frames, or another thing I can do, if you control click and you go up to time, it's got this really cool thing that says, and I use these a lot, like definitely time reverse, tons of times I've used that. Time stretch, that's where you can either speed it up or slow it down. Freeze frame just freezes it, and freeze frame on last frame is what we're going to use. So now it's still got this animation we created, and then it just leaves it there, which is perfect. Perfect. So let's set up our John Doe where he needs to be. I'm going to shrink him down using Shift. I'm going to put him in his final resting place. Let's open these up so you can see what's happening with our numbers. You want them to be legible but not crazy large. And we'll say his final resting place, which is, we'll put him here. In the perfect world, I would probably continue to animate, take off the athletics as he moved over, and then like pop him close in here to some degree. But for the sake of time, we're going to leave him right there. I would also be utilizing the same fonts if I was truly creating this within the brand. Cool. So as this guy goes down, that guy's going to live right there. Let's move him now. Oop, there he goes. Just move him on, like this is where I want it to start. So move it till you see like the fraction of a little bit starting, like right there. Now he comes on, drops down, and done. Let's watch the whole thing. Give it a second because its RAM preview takes a minute. Is the speed perfect? Probably not. You could adjust the speed a little bit. I'd probably speed up the John Doe part. But let's watch it one more time. Boom, boom. Save, render this out. It's got a black background right now, so that's great. If for some reason, always keep in mind that the media encoder that After Effects is currently wanting us to utilize for renderings, which I just miss when I could just go very simply to the render queue. So maybe they'll fix that one day. It doesn't address whatever we set up as our composition background color. It's just always going to make it black. Even if we had this at purple, it would not address that. So remember that you can always throw a shape color behind it if you needed to. Good job.